Hello, guys. It's Mark Zickery, Mr. Sci-Fi, and I'm wearing my Star Trek Wrath of Khan necklace, which is really cool. Really, really cool. Um, so this is our live stream prior to the end of our Kickstarter campaign tomorrow. So we are at 61,000 and change. So we hit our our $60,000 goal. But if anyone pulls out at the last minute, we lose all of it. So please, please, please throw some money our way so that we don't lose all of it. Also, we've got Space Command shares for sale. We now have 2 distributors who want Space Command, and that's very, 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 very good. I spoke to a friend of mine who runs a big independent film company, and he's been nominated for tons and tons and tons of Oscars. And I was checking this strategy with him, and he said, "No, it sounds great," and so that's good. And so meantime, we're just getting ready to finish the creature stuff on forgiveness, getting ready to do Great Solar War. An amazing, 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 amazing time. And, I couldn't be happier with all of this. I just did a really cool interview with the guys at Cinema Sins. They have a new podcast about Star Trek called Captain's Pod. And so I had like a 2-hour chat with them, which they're going to post, and then I'll post it here on Mr. Sci-Fi. I think you guys will really enjoy it. I talked about everything from Smurfs to He-Man to Friday the 13th, the series, to Next Gen, DS9, Babylon 5, on and on. So that is my story, and I'm sticking to it. And of course, Space Command and the other shows that we're gonna be doing: Sweet Haven, Fugitive Space, Magic Time, Dante Station, Rod Serling's After Twilight. Pretty cool, pretty dang cool. So, what else can I tell you? I'm gonna sit here for the next hour. I'm gonna chat. As people come on board, feel free to ask questions, or you can watch this when it's you know, archived. So, but until people start asking questions, I will tell you things and delight you and amaze you, and I'll just kind of pull things out from my collection at random, more or less, and share them with you. So let's see, what can I show you? All right. Well, again, I've talked about my love of 1950s science fiction covers, and so there's things like this Space Hive, right? Pretty cool. Every 90 minutes, they were a target for the Reds. Yes, 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 yes. There were a lot of books about nuclear war, the threat of nuclear war, or after the bomb, during the 50s into the 60s, a whole subgenre of science fiction. Now, Elio Ribeiro says, random question, have you ever met Tom Lehrer personally? No, but I certainly would love to. But of course, he's elderly now, so if one wanted to meet him, one would have to do so quickly. But I think he's one of the geniuses of comedy. He There's nobody like him. If you haven't ever heard of Tom Lehrer, check him out instantly because he's a songwriter and political satirist and just brilliant. Clarence Wiles says, I don't know if you know this today. When I open the post, they all have 60 likes, even if there's six people watching. Huh. I have no idea. I saw a special bulletin the other day. You should watch it. I have watched it numerous times. I think it's terrific. It was a TV show that was about these terrorists taking over something, and a live TV, ostensibly live TV broadcast. But it really was great and really fun. It was done, I think, in the 70s, something like that. But ever since H.G. Wells, or I'm sorry, Orson Welles' War of the World in 1938, his live broadcast that shocked the world, shocked America. um a lot of shows, whenever they do something that seems like live news breaking, where it's like a fictional story, they always have they'll have a crawl along the bottom saying, this isn't real, don't believe it, because they don't want people to think that they're being invaded by Martians or whatever. So but but you mentioned Special Bulletin, and and one thing I love about the age we live in is YouTube, which is my favorite network, has so many of these great old shows just in their entirety, and you can just watch them, where finding them in the old days would have been virtually impossible, if they particularly if they weren't on home video. So you can watch Special Bulletin or Threads, which is an amazing British show that takes place after nuclear war, during and after nuclear war. It's brilliant and really harrowing. And you can find all these great things. I recently talked about Space Patrol, my show that I love, that was live in the 50s. Just fun stuff. How about the 60s Canadian radio broadcast War of the Worlds? I've listened to a number of different versions of War of the Worlds that have been broadcast over the years. Some that follow the script that Howard Koch wrote for Mercury Playhouse for Orson Welles, Howard W. Koch. who also was one of the writers on Casablanca. Interestingly enough, um, and the later versions don't have that same uh, just energy and being of the moment and of the. I usually don't use the word zeitgeist, but zeitgeist. They're kind of like a little bit musty to me because it's like, oh well, it's Jason Robards or it's David Ossman or whatever, and it's like, okay, fine, 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 fine. But though there was one where they had the DJs doing it, and that was pretty fun. That was like they had their own kind of personalities. They were kind of vamping on that, and I enjoyed it. Um, Clarence says the older shows have beginning, middle, and end. Yes, and so does Space Command. So that's one of the reasons I'm doing it. It's so many of these shows, it's clear they have an initial notion, an idea, and then it's like and then often they don't know where it goes or what the ending is, and so they're just kind of vamping or treading water, and they go off the rails. Really, you know, really embarrassing. Super Crew 63 says, "What would you think of somebody remaking Voyage of the Mob of the Sea?" Yes, it was a show that had such great possibility, but then it went into this goofy Irwin Allen nonsense. I mean, that was the problem with virtually all of his TV shows. They have great premises, pretty good production design. I mean, the robot in Lost in Space is great, but then they just go off into silliness, and that would be a problem, So what can I tell you? Um, yes. But the Sea View looks great. The Flying Sub looks great. Let's see the older. Yeah, I mean, what I can tell you is that anything it's all the people who make the show, the writers, particularly the writer producers, because if they, it takes a rare kind of person who can make a show that has some meaning and quality. Elio says in Portugal, someone translates and broadcasts Orson Welles' War of the Worlds. There was some panic, and the guy was arrested. That's funny. Yeah, well, it's like it's a great piece of work. And interestingly enough, shortly after that, in 1938, Orson Welles was traveling in Texas, of all places, and he ran into H.G. Wells, the original author of War of the Worlds, and they actually were on a radio show together being interviewed, and that was fascinating because they were both famous for the same piece of work, and both held each other in regard. And Orson Welles was still in his 20s, an amazing, amazing man. If you haven't seen Citizen Kane or listen to more of the Mercury Playhouse, you've missed a real treat. He was one of a kind, and I actually have a photo of him on my wall that one of the members of my round table took when Wells was shooting a commercial, and it's really cool. Yeah, he was. Orson Welles was the greatest of all time. Yeah, 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 he was amazing, amazing man, and probably pretty difficult to deal with, but just a man of many, many, many talents and brilliant. I mean, he was doing amazing things even when he was a kid. He was a true prodigy, and so yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So let's see, what else do I have here that I can share with you? One of my good friends was Douglas Hayes, who was a great author of. He was a director on Twilight Zone. He did Eye of the Beholder and The After Hours and The Invaders and just Howling Man, many great episodes. And he became, after I did the Twilight Zone companion, he became a very, very, very good friend. And he was also a mystery novelist. So this copy, The 12th of Never, is really cool because it was originally given to and signed to Charles Beaumont. And signed by Doug to Charlie Beaumont. And then I found it in a bookstore, and then I took it to Doug, and he signed it to me. So this is an amazing, amazing, what they call an association copy. And he was such a dear friend, and he died at 73. And but boy, we were pals for a couple decades there. So let's see. What about the fourth version of Twilight Zone? You mean the new one, the recent one? Jordan Peele. Um, he's it was okay. I mean, I saw some ones I liked. I saw some ones I didn't like. I just think he could have done better, if he had brought his full attention to it. But that's the way it goes. Let's see what can I show you? Okay, here's an After the Bomb story by Lee Brackett. Lee Brackett was one of the early women writers in science fiction. She was a friend and mentor of Ray Bradbury's, and interestingly enough, and this is after the bomb story, she lived among the Amish community, and she thought they'd do very well after a nuclear war. And so she wrote a book about that called The Long Tomorrow. She, interestingly enough, was also a very successful screenwriter. She was co-writer of the screenplay of The Big Sleep, co-writer with William Faulkner, adapting Raymond Chandler's great Philip Marlowe detective novel. And she wrote movies for John Wayne. She wrote Rio Bravo, and and so she had these two fascinating careers in very male-dominated industries. So let's see. Yeah, well, I love signed books. I love books that are signed by the author. There's something just I find very very cool. For instance, this is Major Donald Kehoe wrote books about flying saucers in the 50s, and he's really good, and he's really goes after quality information. He interviews airline pilots and military pilots who've seen UFOs, and he's really a cut above. He's not a crank. And that's why I got into his work just the last year or so. And here was this is an unscribed copy. So, and then of course in the old days, people used to have book plates, and they were often individualized to them and so forth. So there's flying, like clearly the owner of this was a science fiction fan as well. So, but that's just so cool. And so I have a number of autographed books. Let's see. I remember watching Twilight Zone, the original one, for the first time, and I was always excited when a Bowman episode was on. Yes, he was an amazing writer, a unique writer. He and Matheson were both proteges, and George Clayton Johnson were proteges of Ray Bradbury, and brilliant men, wonderful writers. Um, Rod Serling died so young again. Yes, he did, Stuart. He was 50 years old when he died, and that was really way, way, way too early. He smoked like a chimney. He had kind of bottled down his emotions, so very intense kind of guy. And his dad had died at 52 of a heart attack, so he had a genetic history too. So his brother Robert, who was older, uh, when I interviewed him for the Twilight Zone Companion, he said there wasn't any one cause of Rod's death. It was like an airplane crash. There's never any one cause. It's always several factors come together to create the disaster. And so that was a very interesting observation. But Rod was really brilliant, and he died at 50, but my God, he got a huge amount of work done in the time he had, and we were all so much the better for it. And yeah, and he had a voice that was unique. The funny thing was, he originally didn't intend to be the host of Twilight Zone. In the original pilot, they had a guy named Westbrook von Voorhees who did the March of Time, and it was completely wrong. So then they were trying to figure out who should narrate Twilight Zone, and they thought, well, how about Orson Welles? And he was too expensive. So Rod finally said, "Well, how about me?" And everyone kind of fell out of their chair laughing. And they tried it, and of course, he was perfect. And in fact, his voice became so famous and so was so ideal that he had a second career as a narrator on documentaries and on commercials. He could earn more on one commercial as a voiceover than writing a Playhouse 90 script, which would take him a year. So, you know, yeah, yeah, that's funny. Lucy died of Desi double crosses. Yes, that's funny. But yeah, so but then they all knew each other. Of course, Lucy, Desi, Serling, they all crossed paths. They were all in the same ocean. Uh, Rod was the president of the TV Academy for a while, and so in that category, I'm sure he knew everybody, just everybody. And but he was really charming, really warm, really friendly, really loved people. Great. Um, let's see. Evening, Mark L. John Reno says, "Do you have any acquaintances who've done remakes or reboots?" Yes, I ask because these things tend to be weak, and I'm curious why they got it wrong so often. Battlestar Galactica accepted. Yes. Well, I have many friends who've done adaptations and remakes, in fact, including me. So let's see where to start with this. Well, Ron Moore was a great example of doing it right. I know Ron. He and I have talked about this. He was one of the great writers on Star Trek: The Next Generation, and then he had this dark period where he was writing pilot after pilot, and they might even get shot, but they wouldn't get greenlit. And so he finally said, "Well, okay, what I'm going to do is take a project that the studio already owns." And wants to remake, and come aboard that, and I have a much greater chance of getting a show on the air. So he attached himself to Battlestar Galactica, did the 2-hour backdoor pilot TV movie, and it got greenlit, and he created this classic classic science fiction show. My friends Mark Ferguson and Hawk Ostby adapted the Expanse novels to television. They were the showrunners on that show, and I know a lot of people who do it right. I think they did as well. But they came off writing Iron Man and Cowboys and Aliens and so forth. But the first Iron Man movie. But there's a lot of ways to do it wrong. Most people get it wrong. There's a number of factors that can make it shitty. One is not having respect for the source material. Another is not having anything that you particularly want to say with the material. So it's kind of, it has no center, no core of meaning, not casting well, writing shitty scripts, on and on and on and on. You guys would know these things as well as I do, because most things that are made don't work. And so you watch them and you go, well, that was okay. I started watching this thing set on a space lighthouse, Beacon 23, and it's like, first of all, why would you have a space lighthouse? It's kind of goofy. And but it's by that guy who did Silo, so he clearly likes cylindrical things that people are trapped inside. Yeah, okay, fine, 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 fine. But right now I'm finding it a pretty dumb show so far. Um, Let's see. I don't know if it's only me, but I didn't care as much for the 1 hour episodes as the 20-minute ones. Twilight Zone, yeah, there's some hour ones that are just great. Death Ship is great. I love Jess Bell, the Earl Hamner one. Miniature with Robert Duvall is terrific. And On Thursday We Leave for Home is one of Serling's greatest scripts ever. James Whitmore is just brilliant in that show. So there were some, but their batting average wasn't as high as with the half-hour episodes, and that's the reason it seems to not work as well. Time Tunnel was a fun show, yes, and I love the design of the Tunnel. Jay Litka says, "Are you going to try and see the release of The Abyss in 4K?" I've been waiting so long for The Abyss to come out in something better than DVD. I have watched that DVD of the director's cut of The Abyss over and over. And in fact, I was on a panel, moderating a panel of people who worked on The Abyss and acted in The Abyss. And I actually reached out to Lightstorm to see if they wanted to use that in the Abyss DVD release, the new one, the Blu-ray. So yes. So the answer is the Abyss director's cut is one of my favorite movies. I'm going to be doing a Mr. Sci-Fi on 4 science fiction movies that you must only watch in the director's cut. It's Blade Runner, Dark City, The Abyss, and one other, but I can't remember what it is. But I'll be doing that soon. And so I've been waiting for The Abyss in a Blu-ray edition, and 4K is going to be great. Even the trailer looks spectacular. So yes, I'm absolutely going. I'm going to go see it on a big screen, and then I'm going to buy that 4K disc as soon as I possibly can. So yeah, Boy and His Dog is a fun movie. Harlan Ellison's a novella. What did I think of Enterprise? I didn't watch many of them. My understanding is it got better in the 4th season. They brought more of Star Trek canon in because of what Star Trek New Voyages was doing. Impressed them. But I don't have enough experience of it to really have an opinion. Let's see. Death Ship. Yeah, I actually have the spacesuit and space helmet from Death Ship, and it's one of the prizes of my collection. Jose Vasquez says, Mark, I remember watching The 50-Foot Woman and The 50-Foot Man. Why is it that you cannot find The 50-Foot Man online for rent or sale? Um, Let me think. What's the name of that movie? The reason you can't find it is it's not titled The 50-Foot Man in its English title. It was I think it's The Amazing Colossal Man. If you look for it under that, there were 2. There was a first one and a second one, and you should be able to find it under those titles. Um, Quint says Orson Welles was apparently the first choice to play Goldfinger, but was too expensive. That would have been interesting. Yes, but Gert Frobe is great. You expect me to talk? No, Mr. Bond, I expect you to die. The Hour Twilight Zones, yeah, definitely. If you've never seen them, they're really worth checking out. Blade Runner Final Cut, in my opinion. And Alien Director's Cut. Yes, that was the other one. Alien's Director's Cut. But Alien, the original theatrical release of Alien is still great too. But there's just certain movies that, like Dark City, is a totally different structure. And if you see the original theatrical release, it sucks. And then if you see the director's cut, it's like one of the greats. So Steve K says, I liked Enterprise. As with any series, some episodes better than others, and the war at the end got old. Yeah, but it's it was at least an attempt to do something different. But I think that Rick and Brandon Braga at that point were so burnt out, so tired of doing Star Trek. It kind of shows. What do I think of Stargate's return? Great. I think that's great. I I've never really gotten into Stargate. There's just so much of it. I was supposed to write for it. I was supposed to write for that, and Neil Gaiman also recommended me to Doctor Who, but those didn't come to fruition, sadly. But and the one gig I turned down that I wish I hadn't was my friend Michael Reeves was a producer or story editor on Batman the Animated Series, and he wanted me to write one. And I said no because by then I was in live action and did not want to go back to animation. But in retrospect, I should have done it. Um, yeah, yeah. Time Tunnel Reboot failed. Yes, it did. It did. And I mean, it's hard to get something to be good. Think about it this way. It takes hundreds, if not thousands of people to make a TV show or a movie. It's just a huge mass effort. And all you need is one vital person to do a shitty job. The DP, the writer, the producer, the director, the lead actors, then you're screwed. You're screwed. And of course, the most important of all of those is a good script. If the script sucks, you can have a good movie with an adequate script. And then, of course, I'm sure we all have our guilty pleasures where it's not a good script, but we still love it. Like, for instance, Creation of the Humanoids is one of those for me. I saw it when I was a kid. I saw Jack Pierce, who was the great makeup artist, go on a local TV show and make up the host as a humanoid. So it was just a wonderful film for me. But it's not a good movie. Objectively, it's not a good movie, but I still love it. Um, don't forget Night Gallery. Yeah, Night Gallery has some great episodes. They're tearing down Tim Riley's bar is a brilliant piece of work by William Wyndham and Rod Serling, and there's some great episodes of Night Gallery. But again, the batting average is lower than the half-hour Twilight Zones. Rod was not. He didn't have the power that he needed to make that show what it wanted to be. We're hoping to do some of those unmade Night Gallery scripts that Rod wrote for Rod Serling's After Twilight. We'll see if that comes to fruition. But I'll let you know as I know. How many episodes do you have of Space Command? We've finished shooting our sixth hour, and we have an animatic prequel that was done as an audio play and graphic novel and combined. So I'd say about maybe 6.5 hours shot so far, another 6 hours to go, and that's the first season. And then we have five series we're doing after that. So it's going to be pretty exciting because I'm creating those with, the creators of Farscape and The Expanse and Alien Nation and on and on. So it's really, really cool. Um, Elio, thanks for being here as long as you were. Remember to pledge to our Kickstarter campaign. We have one more day. We've hit our goal, but if anyone pulls money out, we could lose all of it still. And so I'm trying to get a buffer so that won't happen. And of course, if anyone wants to buy Space Command shares, uh, we have two distributors who want to partner with us, and that's very exciting. So if you want to find out about Space Command shares, where you get a portion of my producer's net revenue for $7,500, just email me at markzickery@gmail.com. Yeah, Dark City. Here's the problem with Dark City. I'll tell you what happened with it. It's a fascinating story. The writer and the director wanted to do this science fiction mystery, where basically a guy wakes up and I think he wakes up in an empty bathtub, and he sees a murdered girl and he thinks he might have murdered her, but he has no memory. And at first we think it's kind of just like a standard noir kind of mystery, but as it goes on, we realize it's a science fiction story and there's aliens and there's all sorts of weird shit happening. And and at the end, you realize what the gag is, what happens. It's a wonderful movie, and it stars Rufus Sewell, who later starred in Man in the High Castle. Wonderful actor. But then when they previewed it in front of really stupid audiences out in the boonies, and they said, "Well, I don't understand any of it. Everything should be explained at the beginning." So the studio insisted, so they re-edited it. So the entire mystery is revealed at the very beginning of the movie, which makes the movie stupid because why watch the rest of the movie if you know what the gag is? So never, never, never watch the theater cut of Dark City. Always watch. I mean, don't watch the theatrical cut. Watch the director's cut of Dark City. You can get the DVD for almost no money, and it's really a wonderful, wonderful film. Um, let's see. Are the series Trek-like too? I don't quite know what the question means, but you mean like Space Command? Is it like Star Trek? Yes. Do I only write science fiction? No. Interestingly enough, science fiction has always been my love. It's my wheelhouse. It's where my head lives. But I've written in my career. Let's see. I've written children's animation like Smurfs, He-Man, Super Friends, all that stuff. I've written non-fiction books like the Twilight Zone Companion and a book with Guillermo del Toro. I've written movies that were not science fiction. I've written westerns. I was a writer producer on Lazarus Man. I've written comedy. I've done comedy pilots on assignment for NBC. I've written mainstream drama for Showtime. I've written a memoir about my mom that I'm publishing now. And what else? Yeah, I've done basically all of it. The only thing I haven't written is a play. I've written horror. Yes, I was story editor on Friday the 13th, the series. So I wrote a bunch of those. And so I've enjoyed all of these things I've written it because the trick is always to find the emotional truth, to have it come alive. And so yeah, I've done pretty much everything. I've written novels, nonfiction books, movies, TV movies, half-hour comedy, half-hour drama, hour drama, um, radio plays. All these things got produced. This is not, all of it got made. Animation, live action, you name it. So I've got and now I'm a director as well as a writer and a producer. So it's a pretty good life, pretty cushy. And but I've always loved visual effects. I've loved production design. Uh, so this really uses all of my skills. And I was an artist before I was a writer. I was my degree is in painting, sculpture, and graphic arts from UCLA, and I was having gallery shows of my artwork when I was a teenager. So pretty fun, pretty fun. And in fact, I once painted. They used to do special authors issues of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction, like this Isaac Asimov issue, which you can see they did one on Harlan Ellison and Ray Bradbury. So when I was like 21 or 22, I painted this fake cover of the magazine of fantasy and science fiction on the special Mark Zickrey issue. So that I painted this self-portrait, and if you looked, I painted that alien and the Twilight Zone clock up there and the alien planet. And they actually published this cover in the magazine because I sent it to them, and they thought it was really cool. And I still think it's cool. I still love this. So that's pretty funny. So but again, it's sort of like whatever I come up with, I end up doing, and I have tons and tons and tons of ideas I haven't gotten to yet, and some of them I will get to and some of them I won't get to. So it's we'll see what happens. But we're definitely going to be doing a lot of stuff coming forward, and Elaine is writing and directing a feature that she's written that I'll be a producer on. And we'll be talking more about that soon. We're going to do a Kickstarter campaign for that, and we're raising the money and on and on and on. So it's pretty neat, pretty neat. And so horror is fun to write. All of it's fun to write. I have a pretty sharp sense of humor. I mean, I can come up with jokes pretty easily, and so comedy and even animation comedy, like jokes for the Smurfs or the Biscuits or the Littles or any of these other shows I wrote for Puppy's Further Adventures. Because there were two kinds of animation when I was writing animation in the 70s and 80s, which were funny animal, and that included Smurfs, it included the Littles and Biscuits, funny animal, and then science fiction, and that also included things like He-Man and Super Friends and Incredible Hulk and Black Star. I mean, I wrote for all these shows. Pole Position was kind of like a ripoff of Knight Rider, so that was sort of, it had talking cars, but they were robot cars, so that was sort of science fiction. So it was just kind of, so I have chops and all that stuff, and we were writing very very quickly when I wrote animation, and it was fun. It was fun, a lot of fun, and I made a lot of very good friends that I still know to this day. So it was a good way to learn my craft. And so other questions, or I can just keep nattering along and tell you what I know and tell you what I don't know, and we'll go from there. Let's see. I can talk more about science fiction writers, and let me see who might be good to talk about, fun to talk about. This is a really great After the Bomb story. It's called A Canticle for Leibowitz. It's by Walter M. Miller Jr., and it's really, really, really good. It's a great After the Bomb story. James says Friday the 13th had sci-fi. No, sort of. But it's mainly like horror. The basic idea was these two cousins, a male and a female, in their 20s, inherit an antique shop that was owned by their uncle, and he had made a deal with the devil where all these antiques that he sold were cursed, and so he's died, and they want to go and get these cursed antiques back and lock them up so they don't do any more harm. So I wrote a bunch of those. I wrote Pipe Dream, which is about my dad, my very rocky relationship with my dad, and I wrote Scarecrow, and I wrote Dr. Jack, and I wrote the one with Ray Walston that was about the comic book industry. A lot of fun. Uh, how many unproduced Rod Serling scripts do you have? I have some on file, but mainly the Serling family has the all of it, and so I would be utilizing the scripts that they have and and making those. So and they'd be not narrated by Rod from unseen, unheard narration tapes that he did. He dictated everything into a dictation machine. They thought those were lost, and they found 1,000 of them, 1,000 hours of them. And so they would be all it'd be so Rod would be narrating the show. It's called Rod Serling's After Twilight, and it would be made up of scripts that he wrote that were never made, and scripts that he wrote for live TV that haven't been seen since, and scripts by other people like Beaumont and Matheson and so forth. And it'd be a Twilight Zone like anthology show, and it'd be great, great, great fun. So yeah, let's see. Yeah, thank you for loving. I assume you mean loved Friday the 13th, the series. Yeah, it was really fun, really really fun. We were on the Paramount lot, and Star Trek: The Next Generation was just starting up. So when I had lunch in the executive dining room, the entire cast of Next Gen would be sitting at a big table in costume and makeup. So what do I think of the Orville? Um, I like it. And I like the fact that it moved away from that broad comedy because I found the comedy kind of intrusive. I mean, jokes about people's balls or whatever, it's like Jesus Christ. But their intent was basically to do Star Trek: The Next Generation um, now. And Brandon Bragg is on the show, and of course he was one of the writer producers on the original on Star Trek: The Next Generation. In fact, I saw him today at the gym. We know each other, and so I they say that gets better into the later seasons, and I just haven't been able to catch up with it. I'm not current with it, but I like the show, and um, I think the idea of the captain's ex-wife being his first officer is very funny and very very fun, and I like the cast, and so that's fine. Let's see. Hi, Mazzo. I didn't know you were doing a live. I've missed all this time. Yeah, well, you can watch it on the rerun. So it'll be archived. But I mean, yeah, I just decided to do a live stream. This will probably be the last one. Um, before the campaign ends. And again, please, if you want to buy Space Command shares, please contact me. It's now that we have distributors, the revenue will start coming back in, and that'll be split between me and the investors. And I think that's really cool. And 7,500 bucks each. You get to come to the set whenever you want. I take my investors to dinner. I get them into Comic Con. It's a really cool deal. And some of them have bought most of them have bought multiple shares, and it's a cool thing. If I could have bought into Star Trek when Star Trek was on initially, boy, wouldn't that have been cool? But and then we'll be doing the 5 other series that we're doing and beyond. So it's going to be incredibly cool. So and it's just fun to live in this world and know these actors and these directors and producers and writers, and I mean literally. It's I bounce things off them, ideas. Do you take ideas for scripts? Nope. No, I have more ideas than I know what to do with. Um, again, it's like I can't read spec scripts because it might trot on something I want to do, and I don't want to risk lawsuits or any of that stuff. It's life is challenging enough without lawyers being involved. What do I think about The Prisoner? The original Prisoner, not the remake. I thought the remake was a real misfire, but the original Prisoner is one of my favorite series of all time. It's just brilliant. Patrick McGowan is so great, and the other actors in it are so great. Leo McKern, for God's sake, wonderful. And Elaine and I actually went to Wales, and we stayed in the village years later. And there's a photo of us by the big balloon, the rover, and we stayed in a suite just above where where his apartment had been, and which was then a gift shop. And it was, man, oh man! But the original show, if you've never seen the original show, the Patrick McGowan one, do it. It's only like 17 episodes, I think, and it is one of the greatest television shows ever made. It's incredible, wonderful, really holds up. I watched an episode recently, and it just, yep, 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 yep. And what's my favorite episode of The Prisoner? Well, the ending episode, the two-parter, is really weird. Um, I like the show overall. It's of a piece. Some are better than others. The ones with Leo McKern, I like a lot as number two because this is before he played Rumpole of the Bailey, and he's just such a great actor. And he and McGowan, just kind of the way they play off each other is terrific. I like the first episode where he finds himself in the village. Um, they did a great job over. It's wonderful. It's one of the great paranoid shows of all time. James says, "Can I email you my idea of how to save fix Star Trek by modifying its premise?" No, don't, please. Uh, a lot of times people email me saying, "I know how to fix Star Trek," or "I have an idea for a Star Trek novel." I do not have their ear. I, if I, believe me, if I could be writing for Star Trek, I would be, because I would do a better job than a lot of those guys have been doing. But I mean, I keep rooting for Strange New Worlds, and it's so variable. I mean, Jesus, I wish they'd get their heads on straight. I think a big problem with Star Trek is that the people. I don't know if anyone on the show was ever in the military, but they sure don't seem like they were. Whereas Roddenberry, of course, was a B-24 B-17 pilot in World War II, and I mean, these guys who made the original Star Trek, the original Outer Limits, the original Twilight Zone, had all been in World War II. They all knew that world, and they all knew life and death in a way that we don't. And so, but I think, often I watch TV and I feel it's like kids writing it, and they can be of any age, but they just don't have, you know, the meat, the meat. Um, Leo was the best too. Yes, yeah, thanks. I agree. Um, Jonathan says, "Great to hear you funded another new round." Yes, but we're at 61,000. By my lights, if we could be at 70,000, that'd be great, because the max anyone can pledge on a Kickstarter campaign is 10 grand. And last time someone pulled out 10 grand at the last moment, we would have lost all of it. And I called one of my investors, and he plugged in 10 grand like at the last minute, and that was so, whew, that was a close call. And so if we could get 70,000, no one person could torpedo us in that really cruel way. So let's see. Did you like Picard? I haven't seen the end of season three. I think it's a misfire by and large, because it's like Picard isn't commanding. He's not commanding. It's not Picard. It's like he's an old guy, and he's just kind of sitting around a lot, and it's just it's not my favorite thing. Did you try writing for SNEWS? What is SNEWS? Star. I don't know what that is. If you tell me what that acronym is, I will tell you whether I tried writing for it. So SSNEW. I'd be glad to find out what that is. Congrats, Mazzo says thank you, but don't congratulate me until tomorrow when we close the campaign. So Steve K says, "I didn't add on to my pledge this morning." Thank you so much. It's so great. I mean, I was talking to the head of Roadside Attractions this morning at the gym. He and I talk often. He's a big movie producer, big independent feature company, and I told him my fans of Finance Space Command, and he was my fans and investors, and he was just amazed and very, very admiring of that, because most people, if they wanted their fans to underwrite what they're doing, they wouldn't get very far, because they're not doing work that justifies that. So I'm grateful to all of you. Let's see. Not sure if you mentioned it, but have you co-written a written manga? No, I haven't. The closest I've come to anime is there was a company called Tokyo Movie Shinsa, which was TMS, and they wanted to break into the American cartoon market. And their first show was a show called Mighty Orbots, and I wrote a bunch of those. And my friend Michael Reeves was the story editor on that, and it was great fun. I really enjoyed it, and it had great animation. But that's the closest I ever came to anime. But it was Japanese and giant robots. So let's see, the Lost Souls trilogy. Congratulations, all the best. Thanks. Strange New Worlds. Thank you. I always think of that as SNW, so I didn't know that there was an E in it. I would love to write for Strange New Worlds. I loved the first pilot of Star Trek. I would have loved to have seen it made as Roddenberry envisioned it. I've been watching it. I haven't seen all of season 2, but I get so irritated when they have stupid ideas, so or when it's like, "Who are these people?" They have so many characters, and they kind of blend together, like, there's 3 brunettes, and they're sorta kinda they're all kind of assertive, females, and it's like, they're not different from each other enough, and who are they? I don't know, and Pike doesn't seem commanding enough. He's just kinda like they have silly episodes, and for me, there's silliness. I mean, Trouble with Tribbles is a great example where Kirk isn't stupid. He's sarcastic, which is very fun, but he's not. It's sort of like it's really interesting when Richard Manning and Hans Beimler were hired on Star Trek: The Next Generation. They sat down with Roddenberry at the very beginning of the job, and Roddenberry was telling them about all the characters. And one note he had about Picard is the captain. Keep him strong, and that was absolutely right. You don't. It's like so. I love by and large, I really like the cast of Strange New Worlds, and I love the production design. But God, I wish they had more. They had a higher batting average. They have some good episodes, but boy, they've got a lot of weak ones by my lights. And yes, but I'd love to write for Strange New Worlds. I think I could knock it out of the park. So let's see. Where do you find the Twilight Zone mask? There was a Twilight Zone art show, and someone had made that, and I bought it. The original Eye of the Beholder, my friend Doug Hayes directed it, and it was actually prosthetics because Rod wrote the script saying, well, they're hideously ugly, and they were thinking, well, how can we afford to do this? And Doug had been a visual artist. He'd been an illustrator, and he had also been an in-betweener for Disney on Cinderella. I think it was Cinderella. And so he went into William Tuttle, the head of the MGM makeup department, and Tuttle was just working on the Morlock makeup for the Time Machine, George Powell's Time Machine. And he saw these pieces that you would glue on the face, so they were prosthetics, they weren't masks. And so he said, "Oh." And so he and Doug told me he got his hands in the clay with Tuttle, and they worked out this wonderful asymmetry so that there's like a brow piece and a cheek piece and a nose and upper lip piece. And as a result, it was just a few little pieces that you could glue, and one goes this way and one goes that way. So that would give variation between the people. And so that was the doctor's initials in that episode, and brilliant design. I love it. And Doug called them pig people. He said they were like pig people, and because of the nose. And Doug's wife, JP, Joanna Hayes, she played one of the nurses in that episode, so that was really fun. And I have some color photos from that episode, even though it was shot in black and white. I love when I see color photos from Twilight Zone because they're so rare. And I've seen ones from The After Hours and Long Won't Live Walter Jameson and King Nine Will Not Return and Time Enough at Last and two. So, but I'd love to, and there's a great photo of Serling. I've only found it as a color newspaper image in Rod's scrapbook, which I color Xeroxed, but I've never found a print of that. And I've only seen that in black and white prints, but the color is staggering. It's a great photo. Let's see. You may have seen this before, but are you an Asgardian? I don't know. I know Asgard from Thor, but I don't know if anything beyond that. El John Reese says, did you see the Star Trek Continues fanfic series run by Vic Mignogna? I thought they were really brilliant. Really captured the essence of TOS to me. Well, as you know, I wrote and directed and produced World Enough in Time for Star Trek New Voyages. You can watch it here on Mr. Sci-Fi. I'm very proud of it. It was nominated for the Hugo and Nebula, won the TV Guide Award. And Vic, actually, I had lunch with him some years ago when he was doing Star Trek Continues, and he wanted me to write the sequel to Mirror Mirror, which is one of my favorite original Star Trek episodes. And it didn't work out for various reasons, but I watched his sequel, and I thought it was very, very good. I haven't seen all of the Star Trek Continues episodes, and I think he makes a couple of mistakes. When I was directing Jim Cawley, Elaine and I basically directed it. James Cawley played Kirk, and I said to him, "Do not do an impersonation of Shatner. Act the role, have an internal life to the role, feel the scene, be in the moment." And he did, by and large. And But when I see Vic Mignogna just kind of pulling faces and doing Shatner and those ridiculous fight scenes, my idea with World Enough in Time was I was going to do that as though it were a Star Trek episode made now. So I didn't shoot it 4:3. I shot it 16:9, and we had modern visual effects and and so forth. So I wasn't trying to write something as though it was aired by NBC in 1966. And I think some of the mistakes they make in some of these Star Trek fan films is they don't realize how the only one who can do Shatner and not look ridiculous is Shatner. Shatner is the world's greatest bad actor. He has all these mannerisms and all these things he does, but he's terrific. He's wonderful. There's no one like him. And anyone tries to imitate him, and they just become a caricature, and that's not going to work for drama. So, but I'm still really, I'm glad they did Star Trek New Voyages and Star Trek Continues, and I'm really sorry that Axanar killed both. That's another story for another time. Um, let's see. Zork Player One says, "I like everything you have on the shelf." Me too. That's why that's why I have it. I mean, it's just so much fun to just gather all this stuff and find all this stuff. I mean, look at this. Here's The Mind Spider by Fritz Leiber. It's got this amazing Ed M. Schwiller cover. I mean, let's see if I can get this. I mean, look at that. It's from the 50s. Isn't that great? I could build that on Space Command as a suit, and it would look absolutely terrific. I mean, look at that. So yes, I love all this stuff too. And by the way, we were talking about The Prisoner a moment ago. I think, let me see. Yes, number 6. Number 6. So very, very fun. Very, very fun. So let's see. Rod was black and white in real life. Not actually, but one could think that, yes. A lot of people don't know he was short. He was like 5'5". And so on TV you don't get that feeling. He seems, regular size, but so that's kind of interesting. Didn't they recently reboot Twilight Zone? I've only heard mixed things, generally not in love. Yeah, Jordan Peele did that, and it's a mixed bag. Some good episodes, some bad, but nothing like what Serling did. Shatner and Marilyn Monroe, two people that anyone tries to imitate and they look absurd. Yes, 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 yes. I mean, Marilyn Monroe, it's really interesting to compare her with some of the other blonde bombshells like Jane Mansfield and so forth, and Mamie Van Buren or whatever her name is. They are all caricatures. And Marilyn Monroe has such an inner life, and she's a wonderful actress, that she does something that's so oddly authentic. And I mean, there's just a lot going on. And it's a shame she didn't get the dramatic career she deserved. It's a shame that she died young and wasn't able to make that transition. Some sex bombs are able to transfer their careers to drama, real drama. Sophia Loren did it brilliantly, but Marilyn couldn't do it. She tried it with the Misfits, but that's not. I don't really like that movie very much. But she's a heartbreaker. I mean, she's just wonderful in every way. I think Marilyn Monroe is one of a kind. So let's see what else. I am not a number. Yes, exactly. I'm a free man. That does surprise me. I didn't know Rod was short. Well, I'll tell you a funny story. He was teaching at I think it was Antioch, and there was this very tall student came up to him in the hallway and started to talk to him. And Rod said, "No, no, no, hang on a minute." And Rod walked him over to a staircase and had him go several stairs down until they were at like eye level. And then Rod said, "Yeah, okay, now." And it wasn't to like diminish the guy. It was a joke, so Rod wouldn't have to crane his neck. But totally charming. Everyone who met Rod loved him. I never heard anybody say anything negative about Rod. The only thing they said is such a shame he smoked because he died of open heart surgery, and it was really a tragedy. So let's see. Have you ever had to pack up all things you've collected and move to a new house? Not in many, 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 many years. I would sort of dread that, but we'll see what happens. But I'm very comfortable here. I love living in West Hollywood, and it's nice. So still love original Lou Term. I'm not sure what Lou Term is, so you'll tell me. What do I think of David Gerald? Well, Elaine, my wife, went to college with David Gerald. She actually read The Trouble with Tribbles in the first draft, and I said to her, "You should have kept that copy." But she gave it back to David. She goes so far back with David Gerald that she knows him by his real name, which is Jerry, and so that's pretty fun. And so whenever they run into each other, they're really friendly. There's a lot of affection there. David Gerald, for a while, he was trying to sort of be a second Harlan Ellison. He was kind of being a snide asshole years ago, but he couldn't carry it off because he didn't have Harlan's whatever made Harlan Harlan. And so I think he's mellowed over the years, maybe, sort of, kind of. But Troubles Tribbles is one of the great Star Trek episodes. He sold it when he was like 22. Amazing. Hats off to him. And I read his books on Star Trek and I enjoyed them. And I've read some of his novels, and I see him fairly often at conventions. But let's see. Uh, let's see. Oh, that's hilarious. I'm so jealous of your stories, Mark. Well, thanks, I guess. I mean, I'm just someone who had a passion and followed it. It's Ray Bradbury had said something similar. It was like, this is the story of a man who, wanted to go somewhere and went. So I've been very lucky. I'm glad I grew up in LA because that allowed me to meet so many of my heroes. And it's funny because I never needed to hang out or be friends with the Star Trek actors. It was the writers that I wanted to know. I wanted to know DC Fontana and Harlan Ellison and on and on, David Gerald and all these guys and girls. And I did, and I do. They're still friends, the ones who are still with us. And but I did invite David Gerald and Dorothy Fontana in to pitch to Sliders when I was producer, and David sold a script, sold a story, and I was very glad of that. So let's see, favorite non-sci-fi show. Whew, what would that be? Uh, well, I like a lot of comedies. The Dick Van Dyke Show is great. I Love Lucy is unique. The Honeymooners is great. What else do I have? Faulty Towers is amazing, brilliant, wonderful. What else do I like? Whew, um, I watch a lot of stuff, and I have a lot of things that I love, and I'd have to look at my DVD shelf to see what's there, but I have a lot of favorite shows, and let me think about any dramas that I love. It was because that dramas, mainstream dramas, what do I like? I'm sure there's things that I mean, 6 Feet Under was great. Mad Men had its moments. Um, I watch stuff, but there's only so much time in one's life. I thought White Lotus was terrific, both seasons. So, are you okay with episodes of a series which don't think about character arcs or make a point, but only exist for an enjoyable little adventure in that universe? Yes, yes, absolutely. And like Faulty Towers. Faulty Towers is just funny. It's not trying to make a huge point, but it's just brilliant. And I just watched a movie called In Bruges, and it's great. It's great. Wonderful. Just wonderful. And so, yes. But the thing is, if something's going to be escapist and just fun, then it really has to be of quality. In other words, the acting has to be terrific, the writing, the production values. It has to pay off. I'm a Woody Allen fan, and I don't think he was a child molester, by the way. And some of his films are some of my favorite films. Stardust Memories, I love. Annie Hall. You know, um, yeah, absolutely. I can get behind any number of things. Let's see. What did you think about the Invaders TV show? I liked it a lot when I was a kid. It was so paranoid. It's like my favorite thing was, the way you could tell that the invaders were invaders pretending to be human is they would have this little finger like this because they apparently had this many fingers and couldn't operate the pinky. And then in one episode he falls in love with this girl and she turns out to be an alien. He says, "Well, but wait a minute, your hands are normal." He says, "Yes, some of us can do that." It's like, gee! Da 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 dee dee. I think that's the Invaders theme song. But the flying saucer looked great. The little tubes they went into to revive themselves were cool. And it, of course, had this amazing talent pool of 1960s actors. I haven't watched all of them, but the ones I've seen recently, I've enjoyed. But it never resolved. I don't think. 2 seasons and out, I believe. Um, All in the Family and Columbo are classics. Yeah, 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 yeah. Columbo, I thought was great. I mean, I didn't. I think some were better than others, but I loved Peter Falk in that role. Um, yeah, and another film you should see is Wings of Desire, which is a terrific, terrific film, and Peter Falk is in it, and it's one of my favorite films of all time. Let's see. British Spy-Fi besides Prisoner, Man from U.N.C.L.E., Avengers, Man in the Suitcase. Yeah, I'm a big fan of the Avengers, particularly Diana Rigg. She was just brilliant, wonderful, sexy, beautiful, amazing, and had great chemistry with John Peel. Um, Man from U.N.C.L.E., I haven't watched as an adult, but I've heard it doesn't really hold up very well over time. I liked Secret Agent with Patrick McGoohan. That was fun. But, so I mean, I kind of come across this stuff and check it out, and some of it is great still, and some of it is not. Do you have a favorite Philip K? But one thing I want to say before I get to that question is when I was a kid, you couldn't see movies and TV shows whenever you wanted. You saw them when they aired, and if they cut the shit out of them to put in more commercials, that's just what you had to live with. And if you loved a movie, maybe it would come back some years later in revival, but most of life was waiting to see the things you loved. You couldn't own movies, you couldn't own TV shows. Now we can see whatever we want to see, whenever we want to see it, and that is an enormous blessing, just a huge blessing. And so we live in a wonderful time, guys. Do you have a favorite Philip K. Dick story and or screen adaptation? Blade Runner, of course. I mean, it's brilliant. My favorite Philip K. Dick novel probably is Man in the High Castle. I love alternate histories where the Nazis won, simply because if they'd won, I wouldn't be here. My family wouldn't be here. So, but I like Man in the High Castle. I've read a lot of Philip K. Dick. Three Stigmata of Palmer Eldritch. Do Androids Dream of Electric Sheep is very good, but very different from Blade Runner. There's a lot of great Philip K. Dick stuff, and he was again one of a kind, and just really unique individual. Did you have creative aesthetic differences with the design visual effects producers on Space Command over the Pulp 20s look? It's actually a Pulp 50s look. It's very specific to the movies and science fiction book covers and magazine covers of the 50s. Very, very, very specifically. The answer to that is, did I have trouble with anyone? No, I'm in charge. So it does, the question is always, does someone have trouble with me? And if they have trouble with me, I don't know. What do you do about that? No, people love, the Galaxy magazine, all of this stuff. It's just wonderful. And how can you not love this stuff? Let me see if there's some more cool covers. Let me just Journey into Space, the British paperback. Look at that. How can you not love these things? And so no, and so I love the look of the Paladin. I love the look of many of the things we have in Space Command, and no, people mainly were very, very excited to use that aesthetic, and also because I have an art background, I'm able to discuss it in great detail, and a lot of my points of reference are very specific. Like I can say, well, let's use the aesthetic of Antonin Gaudi, or let's you remember that painting by Rembrandt or whatever. I have vast art knowledge, and so or I can say, there's this cool cover by Ed Emshwiller or Jack Gogan or Richard Powers, and here's a cool thing I have in mind or whatever. And so that's really fun. Let's see. Mazza says I was lucky enough to meet Diana Rigg before she died. She saw my tattoo of her and seemed to not think I was crazy. That was nice. Send me that tattoo. I'd love to see it. It's Diana Rigg was a class act. I'm so glad she got to be in Game of Thrones near the end because it was very hard to see her age because she was so spectacular when she was young in every way. She was so smart and assertive and phenomenal. I remember after she did the Avengers, she did a stage play of, I think it was Abelard and Eloise, and she appeared on naked on stage, and she said a lot of the fans were coming just for that, and I never saw that, sadly, but would have loved to have, but she's just one. If you've never seen the Avengers, if you've never seen Diana Rigg in that show, you have missed one of life's great joys. So let's see. Have I read Lynn Carter? Uh, uh, I read him, but long, long ago. He's not on my list of favorites, but yeah, I did read him. I read everybody when I was a kid. Patrick McGoohan would have made a good Bond. Yes, and he actually auditioned for it and lost out to Sean Connery. But yes, he would have been a terrific, terrific Bond. No two ways about it. And But he was very angry and very difficult, and I think that might have been a factor as well. Just brilliant. But see, some people are brilliant where they're fine to be around, and other people are brilliant where they're so intense and they're so discontented and that they're very difficult to be around, but brilliant nonetheless. And you can have both kinds of those making great art. You can be a jerk, or you can be like, super nice guy. But the jerks wear you out, I'll tell you. And so there's some people where it's like I can watch their movies and TV shows, but I do not need to hang out with them. So let's see. Uh, he began the stream vision a few years ago. I joined. The last I knew is in order to keep your citizenship, you have to send a contribution, maybe $100 or so. I don't know which thing we're talking about, so let me know, and I'll tell you. Let's see. Diana was amazing, and Pat McGee was such a gent. Yes. I wrote a chapter in my PhD thesis on the Avengers. Good, good, because nowadays when you say the Avengers, most people probably think you're talking about the Marvel Universe. Did Drexler pull out of Space Command? Yes, he did, but he went on to other projects, and that was fine. I mean, he's a brilliant man, brilliant visual effects guy, and a man of many talents. I mean, my God, he won Emmys for visual effects and an Oscar for makeup. And he told me a very funny story, which was he took his Oscar to the makeup department after he won it. He won for Dick Tracy, and when he took it home, he noticed that the gold plate was kind of worn off. And he thought, well, gosh, I just guess having all those people handle it took off the patina, so he had it regilded and put it in a display case where no one could touch it. And then later we found out one of the makeup guys had made a mold of it and was selling copies online. That guy actually went to jail, and that's what happened. So that's what stripped off the gilt, the gold. So pretty funny. But I ran into Doug at the Star Trek convention recently. His wife Dorothy died, which was very sad. They were a wonderful couple, but he met a new woman and is with her now, and it just kind of brought him back from that well of grief. And so he said, let's get together. And so as soon as Elaine is over the flu, we're going to reach out to Doug and get together. And he's really a wonderful man and a passionate man and an incredibly talented guy. So I have nothing but good things to say about him. Let's see. Hi, do you know about Cinefex magazine? Yes, I love it. And I've got a whole bunch of them over there. I was so sad when they went under because I love reading about visual effects, and so that's such a shame. But I've collected them from day one. It's interesting that Pat McGowan was considered angry. There's a book that Gordon Sander called Rod Serling, The Last Angry Man in Hollywood. I don't like Gordon Sander's book. I think nor the other one that was written. I can't remember the name of it. Joel Engel wrote it. I know Joel. I like him, but I totally disagree with their interpretation of Rod, where they say he was burnt out, husk at the end, and sad and just depressed. And he said, in his last interview, he said, I don't know if anyone will remember me. It's like, no, that's not accurate. Rod, to his dying day, was warm, funny, friendly, loving, loved. Um, a remarkable man, a brilliant man. He was writing to like his last day on earth. He was, incredibly productive even up to his last year. He was not a burnt out husk. He was not a tragic, melancholy figure. That's a total misunderstanding of Rod Serling. He obviously the thing is, in the 50s, he was the golden boy of television. Okay, he won more Emmys than anyone. He wrote Playhouse 90s, all that stuff. Then he created Twilight Zone, and it's one of the classics of TV. Sadly, he didn't live long enough to know that Twilight Zone would be one of the endlessly, popular TV shows. But so after Twilight Zone, he had that really bad experience on Night Gallery where he and Jack Laird just butted heads all the time, the showrunner. And then he was a guy taking assignments, writing adaptations of other people's work. And yes, at the end of his life, he wasn't, handed the world on a plate like he had been in the 50s. But he was still earning a very good money as a writer, earning very good money as a narrator. His daughters were growing, and he'd seen his daughter Jodie gone to her wedding, and he had made it. He had made it, and so he might have some depressions or momentary sadness that he hadn't gotten to be everything that he had intended, but he was hardly a failure, hardly a depressive, hardly any of those things, and so their interpretation I totally disagree with. Let's see. It'd be interesting to see the reaction of kids who first see Space Command and later when they grow up and learn about and get exposed to 50 sci-fi. Yes, and I was so amazed, just blown over by Elon Musk bringing back this kind of spaceship. I never in my lifetime thought that would happen. So to have that happen was so wonderful and so cool. So I'm really glad about that. So Quinn Davis has ever worked with Tom Savini. No, but I've met him, and I saw him at Monsterpalooza recently. I mean, he's one of the greats, of course, and I love his work, and even his acting work and things like Dawn of the Dead is just fun, super fun. Do I have any stories from the Illustrated Man? Do you mean any anecdotes to tell about it? Um, it's one of the great books by Ray Bradbury. The movie wasn't that good with Rod Steiger. Ray told me what happened was he was selling short stories and he was writing and making kind of barely making it as a writer. And then his wife got pregnant with her first daughter, and he knew he wasn't going to be able to support them both. His wife had been working some job, like a bookstore or something, and so Norman Corwin, who was a very famous writer and also another friend of mine, was very established in New York and said, "Come to New York. I'll introduce you to all the book editors, and you'll get a book deal." So Ray went there, and he met with editors, and one of them said to him, "You got all these short stories, but do you have a novel?" And Ray said, "Well, no, I don't have a novel." And the editor said, "Well, those Mars stories that you've been writing seem to form a narrative. Why don't you go home? Go back to the Y. He was staying at the Y. He was very poor, and why don't you take tonight and think about if you could weave them together into a cohesive narrative, and come back to me tomorrow." So he came back the next day and he said, "It's the Martian Chronicles," and the guy said, "Sold." And they said, "Do you have any more like that?" And he said, "Well, I have these short stories about this illustrated man where his tattoos come alive." And the editor said, "Sold again." So he sold two books in that one meeting, and he went and he got the check for the advance, and he went and got it cashed, and rather than riding the bus back to L.A., he took the train, which was one step up in terms of luxury, and he was just thrilled, and that really got his career going in earnest. So for me to know Ray Bradbury and his mentor Norman Corwin, who became a very good friend of mine, was just such an honor. Let's see. Are there still special effects miniature model makers in Hollywood? Not many. Every now and then someone will want to do something with a model, and I love model work. I really do, but you have to have people who know how to do it. It's like miniatures. I love miniatures, but again, if it's not the Skotak brothers, who are you going to hire? My friend Greg Jean, who made brilliant miniatures, he wanted to work on Space Command. He did some sketches that he had ideas for, like a base on Mars, and but he fell ill and wasn't up to the task of doing it. So it's really a shame. See, the problem is a lot of these guys work with incredibly toxic chemicals. The makeup guys, the miniature guys, all of these guys, they get terrible diseases in later life because they were exposed to such toxic chemicals. That may have been why Kubrick died fairly young. It certainly was why many of them have died young and youngish, 40s, 50s, early 60s. And, so it's a real shame. But I love miniatures. I love all that practical stuff. Um, Mazo says, "Oh, interesting. I prefer your interpretation of Sterling, and it's in line with Anne's. I chat a lot with Anne on Twitter before the Nazis took over. Are you close with Anne?" Um, Yes. I know Anne and Jody both, and wonderful people. I thought Anne's book was absolutely terrific. I highly recommend the audiobook because she reads the audiobook. It's Rod's daughter telling her story of her dad. It's super, and it's a wonderful book. I love it, and it's. I mean, both of his daughters look like him, but in different ways. It's very interesting, and but they're wonderful people. I've been talking to them about, Rod Serling's After Twilight, which is the show I want to do, and hopefully we'll get to do it. But yeah, I'm on very good terms with them. But again, it's like you can't do a quick cut and paste biography of Serling and and not write something that's way off the mark. You have to. I mean, Twilight Zone Companion took me 5 years to write, so it's you really have to know what you're talking about, and a lot of these people, it's once over lightly, sadly. And so remember our Kickstarter campaign, please pledge. We're at a little over 60,000, but if someone pulls out one of the big pledges at the last minute, we lose all of it. So please go there and pledge. And I'm selling shares in Space Command where you get a percentage of my producers' net profits. And now that we have distributors who want the show, it's a very good time to buy them because they will not be for sale once the show is up and running on your local channels. So just a word to the wise. The way you find out about them, they're $7,500 each. Very simple paperwork. You just email me, markzickery@gmail.com, and you are part of the inner circle. Let's see. Sirach, some of them have YouTube channels. If you look for them, to show the how-to of old school model making. Yes, it's great, and I love, love all these how-to guys on YouTube. It's really fun, and yeah, absolutely. Um, I'll look for them. Yeah, absolutely. I love models. I think they look so much better. I do too. I do too. I mean, I was just watching Starship Troopers, which has great model work. It's a real mix of CG and model work and brilliant and stop motion. It's Starship Troopers is one of my favorite films. And then but again, it's you do what you can do. You want it's better to have someone do something well in whatever way of doing it than have someone be shitty. So I mean, I've seen really bad stop motion animation. I've seen really bad visual effects, so and really bad model work. So look at some of Corman's movies, for God's sake. um let's see. Hi, it's good to see you, Richard Ford. I was meaning to call you, but I don't remember if I got to you on the list yet. But buy Space Command shares, pledge to our campaign. It's I mean, see, and let me say one thing about that just for a moment, then I'll go back to the questions. I don't say this stuff flippantly. Before Space Command, I never raised money. I always just worked for the studios and the networks, but that comes with a price. You have to listen to them, and they get total power over what you're doing. And I didn't want that for Space Command. I wanted to be able to cast. Like, I could never have cast the cast I chose. If I had said I want Bill Mumy and Doug Jones and Mira Furlan and Bruce Boxleitner and on and on and on, Armin Shimmerman, these executives would have said, who? They would have said, no, we want you to cast this actor who can't act. It's like, oh man. So we didn't need to go that way. But that means that the only way I finance Space Command is via crowdfunding and selling investment shares. Now once the show is done, then I can take it to the distributors and the buyers. For instance, the first 2 hours of Space Command are completed, redemption. And so now there are distributors who want to run with it and take it out and sell it worldwide. And then it'll bring back revenue, and that revenue will go to my investors. And that's great. But so that's why I kind of bang the drum for all this stuff, because this is how I finance this campaign. If it succeeds, and I hope it will, I think it will, would plug that money right back into shooting. See, one thing I don't tend to talk about very often is I'm fine. I don't need to earn a living from Space Command. I take a small little teeny tiny amount of money, nothing that would make anybody's fortune, but just kind of for like walking around money, but but my main income comes from my Writers Guild pension and Social Security. Yes, I'm that old. And I that makes my nut. I don't have to sweat it, which means that the money goes directly back into Space Command. And so what we take that money from Kickstarter and from those shares, we use it to finish the 2 days of creature shoots that we need to do at the studio. It pays for all the ongoing expenses of paying Dave Edison to be a full-time editor for us, paying Inez de Los Santos to be our line producer, and so forth. And it also allows us to roll camera and hire Doug Jones and Bob Picardo and all these incredible actors. I mean, waiting in the wings, who we haven't even gotten to yet, is, as I said, Armin Shimmerman, Ethan Phillips, Veronica Cartwright, Barbara Bain, Marta Kristen from the original Lost in Space. These are people who we've cast. We've written the roles for them. They're just waiting for us to get to where we can shoot their scenes. Michael Harney's coming back from Orange is the New Black, and Bob Picardo will be back, and so forth. So, these are incredible actors. I love working with them, and so just that's where the money goes, and that's why I keep banging the drum for that, because it to be able to say my fans are financing Space Command. This is the happiest time of my life, guys. I loved working for the studios. I've loved my whole career. I've loved being with Elaine since I was 20 when I met her. She's the best part of every day. But this is the best time of my life. I never look back and say, oh, I wish I was back there doing Friday the 13th. No, this is what I wanted all my life, to be a showrunner. Oh, God, someone's calling. Hold on, guys. Hold on. I'll turn it off. Let me turn this off. There we go. Sorry, guys. I will go back, get find Zoom so I can see you guys. Okay, hold on. Hold on. Okay, did it? No, not Zoom. I'm sorry. I'm on Chrome. Got to remember which modality I'm using. There we go. I can see you now. Good. But to return to this, um, this is my happy time. I'm a showrunner. I get to do things exactly the way I want them. I have a room full of spaceship sets. I have a room full of space suits. I mean, what could be cooler than that? I remember when I was a kid thinking when I'm grown up, I'm going to have a room that looks exactly like a spaceship, and you'll be able to open a door and step out into another room that's an alien terrain. And that's what I've got. You know, it's like, Jesus Christ, how wonderful. Okay, let's see. So let's see. Thanks for saying that you think reliving your childhood through my memories. I love that. Soraka Vulcan says, can you recommend anything by Robert Silverberg? Oh gosh, um, I remember reading Book of Skulls and liking it. Um, Silverberg is extremely variable. He wrote a ton of stuff, and early on, he wrote kind of very serviceable science fiction. But at one point, he was selling regularly to Galaxy, and at one point, the editor H.L. Gold rejected one of his stories, and he said, "Normally, I would buy this, but you can do much better." And he was encouraging Silverberg to reach the heights where he would become a major, major science fiction writer. And Silverberg took that and ran with it, and then started writing the stuff that really made his name. So anything by Silverberg, maybe from like the 1970s, probably you'll be okay because that's when he was really 70s into the 80s. I know Bob, and I see him at conventions, and we talk, and he's a very, very, very nice guy. He's not writing anymore, but because he wrote so much, he just got to a point where he just said, "I'm done." But he's a super nice guy. If you ever see him at a convention, talk to him and Joe Haldeman, because these wonderful people, and you will be well rewarded by those conversations. Let's see, what other questions do we have? Are there any are any of the new series Trekish? The ones I'm doing, yes. Space Command, of course, is very Star Trek in its DNA. Another show that I'm going to do is called Dante's Station, which I co-created with Michael Reeves. It's about a sort of a homicide detective on an alien planet, and it may be in the Space Command universe. It's very probable it will be, and but what the reason I came up with that one was when I wrote for Space Precinct, it was about a New York cop who goes to an alien planet, and I thought, boy, this is such a great notion, future noir, but they're doing it so badly, and yeah, I wrote like 4 of them, and, it's a fun show, it's a goofy show, but I thought, "Boy, it could be so much better." And so Michael and I kind of worked out the series Bible, on Dante's Station, and sadly, Michael died last year from Parkinson's, but that's a show I definitely wanna do and plan to do. So, so there you go. Let's see, Starship Troopers, excellent sleeper, long-term staying power, I agree. George Washington says the effects in Alien from 1979 trump anything I see these days. I agree with that too. Amazing, amazing talent. Well, Ridley Scott is just such a genius. I mean, it's so amazing he's still directing. And you can fault Prometheus and Alien Covenant for story things and so forth, but if you look at that design, what he's pulling off, it's still great. If you turn the sound off on Prometheus, it's a great film. And and again, there's great scenes in Alien Covenant, even though it's not a good movie. But like that stuff with the big ship with the guy with the cowboy hat, and that stuff's great. That stuff's great. Let's see. Battlefield Earth, people hated it. What went wrong? I thought it was great. I haven't ever seen all of it. I've only seen clips, so I don't. And my friend, David Bartlett is always raving about the novels and so forth. So eventually I get down to it. But I'm not a fan of L. Ron Hubbard. I don't like his pulp work. I've read some of it, and it just doesn't. I just don't. It just doesn't catch me where I live. Let's see. Some influencer with millions of followers. That's who they make people cast now. Yeah, yeah. And again, I have total autonomy. So if I want to cast and Gates McFadden is going to be in Sweet Haven, the show I'm creating with Rockney O'Bannon. As I said, Veronica Cartwright, Robert Picardo, Ethan Phillips. I'm talking to George Takei about being in it. It's just Marta Kristen. I mean, Marta Kristen and Bob Picardo play a married couple in that show, and I mean, it's going to be wonderful. So, and Gates McFadden plays Michael Harney's love interest, and both her character, and Michael Harney's character are identical twins. And so we have two characters played by those actors. So it's going to be super fun. The script's written. We've done two table reads of the script, and I just got to get to it and start shooting it. That'll be a Kickstarter campaign soon. Good and original writing can make any project successful if it's done right. I do agree. I do agree. And so that's why you want to encourage good original writing. Steve Neal is one example. He did an enterprise build from scratch some years ago. Yeah, I mean, these guys are really talented, and many of them, are not wealthy. And I love, and that's why I hire people. Some people I hire are very established, like Ian McCaig and so forth, and other people are just starting out. It's a talent is what impresses me, and the age range of the people I'm working with are all the way. Let's see, who's the oldest person I'm working with? That'd probably be Sean Kenny, maybe Nichelle Nichols before she passed, maybe George Takei. But I'm working with people in their 80s, and I'm also working with people in their 20s. So, and some of the actors I cast are younger than that. So I just look for talent. The girl who played Megan in the movie Megan, I met her not long ago at Monsterpalooza, and I want to cast her in a role. We're in conversation about that now. So let's see. We have to have picks. Let's see. Um, let's see. Blah blah blah. Hang on, I've fallen behind. Let's see. Mark, do you have any other vintage Hardy Boys Nancy Drew books? No, I never got into those. I was mainly a sci-fi kid. Future noir could certainly get my attention. Yes, well, you'll like this a lot because it's aliens and humans in this. Dante Station is this mining colony near the core of the galaxy, and it's like Casablanca if it were in a shaft city, all these different levels and underground. And uh, our hero is a homicide cop. He's coming off a really bad uh, divorce, based in New York, and he and his extremely bummed out teenage daughter, He's transferred to this homicide unit at Downty Station, and it's about him and the characters that he works with and deals with on a daily basis, working the homicide beat. So it's a cool show, a very cool show, and so it's very very fun. So let's see. Hi Mark, I've started watching your True History of Sci-Fi series. 3 episodes in, they're great. I'm looking forward to the sections on 1950s radio. Yeah, I just I wish I could be doing these more often, but they take us some prep and just busy doing what I'm doing, but I will get to it, I promise. And eventually, we're going to offer that as a box set itself. We'll put better graphics on it and kind of spiff it up a bit. And eventually, I'd like to do it as a book, because I've known so many of these people personally. I have such different information than most people. I think it would really really be great. You mentioned in the book section about 3 dozen books you recommend. What are your top 5 books written in the post-war pre-70s? I was we could divide that into science fiction and non-science fiction. So let's see, top 5 books in post-war okay, science fiction. Definitely Martian Chronicles, probably Fahrenheit 451, maybe Childhood's End, Have Spacesuit Will Travel, definitely. What would be the fifth? Gosh, maybe Canticle for Leibowitz, but those could easily be 5 other titles that I would love equally well. It's like there's just so many great, great books. But and then in terms of nonfiction, that list would be To Kill a Mockingbird. Oh gosh, I mean I love Huckleberry Finn, but of course that's not post-war. Um, who else have I read that I love? I'd have to go back to my bookshelf. Probably The Big Sleep might be one. Maltese Falcon's a great book. Mainstream fiction. I mean, I just read a lot. I'm reading, a book I've read before, but I think is just brilliant, is The Yiddish Policeman's Union by Michael Chabon. It won the Hugo for best science fiction novel, and it's a great book about. When someone asked me in the previous live stream, is there a book I'd like to see made into a movie? That's one I'd like to see made into a movie. The basic premise is that prior to World War II, the Jews are relocated by the American government temporarily to Alaska, and now it's 60 years later, and the lease has run out, and they have to leave Alaska, but they've set up their own culture, their own society in Alaska, and it's told from the perspective of a homicide cop, and it's just a great book. I was not a fan of Michael Chabon's work on the recent Star Trek series, but I like him. I like his writing, and that book I highly recommend. Now, of course, I'm Jewish, and my mom spoke Yiddish and or understood Yiddish, let us say, and so a lot of the cultural stuff really resonates with me. So that also is probably part of why I love it. Let's see. Gates McFadden. Yeah, yes. Gates is cast in Sweet Haven. Yes. What did I think of Space Rangers? Never saw enough of it to really have an opinion. I saw some of it. I don't have an opinion on it. Asgardia, the Space Nation. Wow, I'll have to find out what that is. I'll look it up. Have I seen Tarkovsky's Solaris? Yes, it's one of my favorite movies by far, and I also love the novels. So that would be another one of my top 5 books. Let's see, where is it? It's back here. Yeah, this is the American first edition of Solaris with a great Jack Gauguin cover. But don't read the early edition. Read the recent translation, because the early editions were translated from not from the original Polish, but from the French translation into English. So it's like one remove, and the recent version is translated directly from the Polish, so it's more accurate. But it's a great book and a great movie. I don't like the George Clooney one, but I love the Tarkovsky. Let's see. Have I seen? And let's see. Jonathan Engel says, let me see. Blah 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 blah. Hold on. Have you seen? Yeah, the culprit behind The Naked Sun was very complicated. It was a mix of a roboticist, the spacers, and the wife. More or less a conspiracy. Robots can kill robots. Humans can lie to robots. Yeah, I've read Asimov. He's not one of my favorite writers. I think he's a little bit superficial. I think he was writing too fast. He wrote like 300 books. But there are works by him that I think are terrific. There's a short story he wrote called The Ugly Little Boy, about a Neanderthal boy who's brought from the past into the present, and it's a great, great story. Really, truly wonderful. Um, is the Dante Station show independent as well? Yes. My plan with all these series I'm going to be doing is to raise the money by selling investment shares and doing crowdfunding, and shoot them, at least shoot the first 2 hours. And then ultimately, that's the Showrunners Network. It's a slate of 6 series. So it's, Space Command, Fugitive Space, Sweet Haven, Magic Time, Dante Station, and Rod Serling's After Twilight. And so the plan is to do all of them financed independently. And then if we partner, at some point, one of these networks, one of these studios is going to see what I'm doing and get it and contact me and say, we'd like to underwrite what you're doing. But they haven't yet. So, but I'm not going to stop. Why should I stop? And so, yeah. So my plan is to make all of these. And oh God, sorry guys. People are choosing to call me right now, and I apologize for that. So, okay, let's see. Yes, that. And how can you watch it? Probably I'll put some of it on Mr. Sci-Fi. It'll be depending on the if a distributor picks it up, what they're going to do, but we'll definitely make sure it's affordable if you have to pay for it. But if you're an investor, or if you pledge on a Kickstarter campaign, we can absolutely make it available to you, and we'll see. And sometimes I put stuff on Mr. Sci-Fi. It varies. I'm learning as I go too, guys. Let's see. Anyway, what 4 or 5 sci-fi book stories would you like to see become movies or televised? Um, well, as I said, I think that Yiddish Policeman's Union would make a great movie or TV show. Beyond that, I'd really have to kind of go through my collection and see what I think would be good. Because again, so many of the adaptations are bad. I'm not chomping at the bit for one thing to be made, because if it's bad, it's like, oh, I mean, like Brave New World has never been well adapted. And Childhood's End was okay, but not great. Martian Chronicles was done as a miniseries, and Matheson scripted it, was shitty. And Dick Berg, who produced it, told me, he was Sterling's best friend. He told me that he hated science fiction. So when he produced that as a miniseries, I thought, oh God, is that the wrong guy? Let's see. Uh, Mark, what are your thoughts on the classic story, The Cold Equations? It's one of the greats, absolutely one of the greatest short stories ever written. Brilliant, wonderful. Who would you consider a modern Rod Serling? Rod was one of a kind. I mean, there ain't another one. There are some people who are incredibly creative. Neil Gaiman is very, very good. Guillermo del Toro is brilliant, and so forth, but all of us are trying. We're all of us the children of Rod Serling in a way. And Ray Bradbury. Those are the two sort of linchpins because they're incredibly prolific, incredibly original, um, and just coming from the heart, always. Ray used to tell me, don't, when you're writing, don't look outward, look inward. And he was right, so, I just, you will never get another Rod Serling, that's for sure. But we'll get people who are their own unique, brilliant artists. And thank God for that. And I mean, I'm not a big Neil Gaiman fan. I like Neil as a person, and I've liked some of his work. I've never read Sandman, though, so I shouldn't comment until I've read that. So in the beginning of Prometheus, what was going on there with the guy drinking the ooze and falling into the waterfall? The engineers seed planets with their DNA and create an evolutionary stream that leads to a sentient species. That's the idea. But it's basically one of them has to sacrifice himself. He's broken down into DNA components to basically seed life on our world. That's what's happening. But Jesus Christ, there's probably an easier way to do it, frankly. Am I familiar with Larry Niven's Ringworld? Yes, I read it years ago when I was a teenager. Really, really liked it. I know Larry Niven as well, and he's a really unique writer. He was the only writer who took Rod Serling's writer's course, the famous writer's school, the correspondence course, and became a professional writer. Rod was just a figurehead on that, and he regretted it. And but Larry Niven is actually, he grew up very wealthy. He's part of the Doheny fortune. If you ever saw Chinatown, like the Dohenys were part of that old Los Angeles money, and we have a street here called Doheny. So Larry Niven was a Doheny from that family, very rich. But when he became a writer, he said, "I'm just going to live on my earnings as a writer. I'm going to make my own way," and he did. And you've got to admire him for that. After Twilight was a show. I thought it was a book you were planning. No, it's a TV show, and going to be narrated by Rod Serling from unreleased Serling material and made up of Serling scripts that were never made and stuff from the 50s live TV and all sorts of stuff. It's going to be great. Have you seen Carnival of Souls? Yes. It's like a feature-length Twilight Zone episode. I like it. It's really weird and very original. It's like Night of the Living Dead. It's one of these indie films made totally by outsiders, not the Hollywood crowd. And it's got this just eerie, creepy, strange vibe. No, I really like that film. I think it's great. Which unfilmed Matheson or Beaumont story would you like to see filmed? Um, I'd have to go back and see. It's hard. I mean, there's great stories by them that are so. I mean, like Miss Gentlebell, which is based on Beaumont's childhood. His mother raised him as a little girl, and he didn't find out he was a little boy until like 7 or 8 years old. So, yeah, and it was, so Miss Gentlebell is a great story, but creepy. I wouldn't want to try and make it. And Matheson wrote stories like Born of Man and Woman, which are like really creepy. So again, I don't know. I'd have to go back into their body of work and see what might make sense, But yeah, what is Fugitive Space about? It's a screenplay I wrote that I'm going to spin off as a series, and I've partnered with Mark Ferguson and Hawk Ostby, who were the showrunners and creators of The Expanse. And they didn't do the novels, but they adapted the novels into television show. And so the basic plot is we discover a sentient race in another system, and they're very different from us. They are like 8 feet tall. They're like vertical jellyfish. They have no bones, and they communicate via colored lights, chromatophores, and but they're as intelligent as we are, and they build spaceships and all that stuff, and they breathe methane. And we work out a prisoner swap with them, where their worst prisoners come to a prison on Earth because they don't breathe oxygen, and so you can't escape. They'll die if they try to escape. And our worst prisoners are sent to their prison on their world because you can't escape the building. It's methane. You'll die. And at the space station that serves as a trade-off point, a prison break erupts. Alien prisoners, human prisoners. Alien guards, human guards. And half the station is human built, half the station is alien built. And there's a big secret that's going on. And our main character is a trustee, a cop who went bad. And to save the life of a family, he murdered his brother cops who were all corrupt cops. And now he's a trustee of the prison. And So he's one of the main characters, and it's sort of like a Ed Harris kind of guy, like in The Abyss. And so it's yeah, so that's what it is. And then the series springs off from that, where it goes back to Earth, and shit's gonna happen between the aliens and us. And yeah, very fun. But it's a commentary on the military-industrial prison complex, and so it's social commentary in science fiction. So it's extremely cool, and many of my friends and many of your favorite actors will be in it. Um, is Have Space Will Travel filmable? Yes, and that would make a great film. My friend Michael Cassett was trying to make it for many years. um, See, part of the problem is that you have to be a fan of this stuff to want to see it, and you know, the the people who don't know science fiction will say, "Well, who's Robert Heinlein? Why would you want to do a kids book that was written in the 50s? It's a great book." I would love to see it made, but boy, there are a million ways you could make it badly and very few ways you could make it well. But if someone made it well, it would be wonderful, just wonderful. So, what is modern sci-fi missing? I find myself rewatching older stuff. I just don't enjoy a lot of the modern stuff. Yeah, here's the problem, in my opinion. Science fiction of the 50s and 60s, Bradbury, Sturgeon, Heinlein, Asimov, Clarke. Um, these guys were looking to a future. They were writing in what I call a shared universe uh, of assumptions that we would land on the moon, that we would colonize on the moon, that we would have space stations, that we would colonize Mars, that we'd go out to the outer planets, that we would develop faster than light drive and go out to the outer planets, encounter sentient species, have robots that we could talk to and that would be, as smart as we were, all of that stuff. And they were basically like Ray Bradbury and definitely, and Arthur C. Clarke definitely were proselytizing for a future, this hopeful future, and we never got that future. That's what Ron Moore is commenting on in For All Mankind. And so so when you take away that expansive view of humanity, the best of humanity, the humanity that moves outward into space, the humanity you see in 2001: A Space Odyssey, um, science fiction turned inward, and all of a sudden it became, and also when the Cold War ended, suddenly you didn't have after the bomb stories. So what could you write about? Well, the internet. And then so it's all kind of like navel watching. It's like, well, like Ready Player One and stuff like that. And it's like, I don't find these things that interesting. I mean, it's like, the internet and going into the internet and being avatars and all that stuff. It's like, I'm not that generation, and that is not my dream. I don't want to sit in a chair and live a virtual reality fantasy. That's what the aliens in the cage were doing. It's like, no, I want to, I think Elon Musk has the right idea. Let's have a colony on Mars. Let's go out into the universe. Clearly the physics that exists, we only have a little teeny tiny bit of that. And there is much more to physics than what we understand at this point. So um, you know, yeah, yeah. Let's see. Thanks for these enlightening chats, Mark. Just returning to Bob Silverberg. Do you recall his Audible chat with Robin Williams, where Williams also chatted with Harlan back in 2000? No, but if you have a link to that, I would love to hear it. Actually, it's really interesting. At years ago, Harlan was going to lose his house because he was broke, and Joe Straczynski decided to put on a roast of Harlan Ellison, and I attended that. It had the tickets were like $100 or whatever, and Robin Williams spoke there, and he was very, very funny, particularly talking about Harlan. And and I remember that I was tasked with picking up Robert Bloch, the creator of Psycho, the novelist of Psycho, and many other things, and drive him to and from the event. And I remember as I was driving to the event, I was talking to him about what Lovecraft was like, because he personally corresponded with Lovecraft. And man, that was such an honor and a great night. Let's see. What is the title of Methane Prison Swap? Fugitive Space. That's called Fugitive Space. Modern sci-fi has very few new ideas. I agree. I agree. I like The Martian a lot, but and Hail Mary was okay, but I think. See, I want to see. Here's my opinion about humanity in general. I mean, we were apes in the trees, and all of that wiring is still with us. Who's part of our group? Who's part of the other group? Who's a threat to us? And our technology has outgrown that wiring, but we haven't. And so at our best, We can do things like paint the Sistine Chapel ceiling. We can land on the moon. We can do all these amazing things. And the fact that we haven't had a war in space yet is the best of humanity. We haven't had a war in space. We have landed on the moon. We're going out to Mars. Great. But on how we behave in the real world, we are so self-destructive. It's so crazy. You know, um, bombing the Palestinians and the atrocities that Hamas did to the Israelis and the war in Ukraine and all of the millions. It's very, very interesting. Elie Wiesel, who was a survivor of the Holocaust and wrote a terrific book about it, called Night. He came up with the term the Holocaust, and someone once asked him, "Do you think there'll be another Holocaust?" And he said, "There are Holocausts all the time, everywhere, every time. It's not unique to the Jews, unique to that moment." And he's right. He was right. And so my whole goal with creating Space Command, creating all the things I create, is to give people the chance to understand the compassion and rising to our best selves, the Star Trek ideal, which was well worth promulgating. Um, it's not pie in the sky. It's not rose-colored glasses. We can be murderers. We can be evil. We can be vile needlessly. Anyone who, here's my opinion about. I don't talk politics on Mr. Sci-Fi. I save that for Mr. Politics, which is my other channel. But I will say this: when they're talking about acceptable civilian losses in a war, the moment the question that should immediately ask is, how many babies are an acceptable loss killed in a war? And the only sane answer is none, none. And so these things are unacceptable, just totally unacceptable. Bombing hospitals. I don't care if there's Hamas tunnels under them. There are people dying because, premature babies dying because they've blocked the fuel, they blocked the water, and there's going to be terrible diseases cropping up. And these children, these traumatized children, will be warped forever, forever. Okay, why do that? Why harm millions of people? I don't care if you hate them. I mean, shit. I don't mean to be on my soapbox. I'm sorry, guys, but one atrocity does not validate another. And the way you turn an enemy into a friend is by embracing their humanity. And if someone is clothed and fed and has a roof over their head and a respect and a hope for the future, they are not going to be your enemy. All right? I mean, really. South Africa managed to change their tune and not have a bloodbath because of Nelson Mandela and because of de Klerk. The two of them were able to reach across this incredible gulf. And South Africa has its problems. God knows corruption and human greed are with us always. But man, there's a better path. And the moment we determine to be on that side of the equation, amazing things can happen, honest to God. So anyway, enough of my little speech. Let's see. Blah 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 blah. What is the title of it? Yeah. Modern sci-fi has very few new ideas. Amazing and spot-on answer for the modern sci-fi. I'm definitely going to have to use your comments on Serling and sci-fi if I write an academic article on Twilight Zone. Yes, you will. And remember, my email is marksecree@gmail.com. You can buy Space Command shares, $7,500 each. I will put it right into Space Command. You can come on set. We can name a spacecraft after you. Have spacesuit will travel. Was set in small town 50s USA in my mind. Unless the bully has a buzz cut, the suit looks like cover. Might be disappointed. Yeah, the cover of Have Spacesuit Will Travel is one of my favorite book covers. I don't have it at hand right now. It's in amongst the books, but it's an Ed M. Schroy cover, and it is one of my favorite of all time. Let's see. Schools should have courses in morality. Yeah, but again, we're not taught. I had a class in consumer protection when I was in high school, and as a result, I've never been cheated. If they teach you what you need to live on, but also you really need to be exposed to compassion as a kid. My mom was incredibly compassionate, and so I was raised in that. I don't see the other people as the enemy. I see violence as the enemy. I think guns are a problem, a huge problem, and I think that I mean, what side of the equation are you on? When you die, are you going to leave the world a better place or a worse place? That's the key question, and I mean, I'd prefer not to die, frankly, but, I mean, all the things that have touched us, all the things that have moved us, all the people in our lives who have made us better, I mean, that's real. That's as real as death. It's as real as the Holocaust. I mean, Hitler didn't win, which is why I'm here. Um, you know, good wins, and it's not violence that wins. It's kindness that wins. So there you go. I mean, it's really interesting the fact that Germany and Japan did not fall back into fascism and militarism. They were given a different path and stayed on that path. And so and it's because we did not exact mindless violence, mindless vengeance. We built societies that could stand. And there's and not perfect, but it was a better path, and I'm glad of it. Let's see. I enjoyed the hello, Galinda. I enjoyed the first season screen adaptation of Asimov's Foundation. I've seen some of it. I've mixed. It's a mixed bag to me. The I don't have characters that I cue into, and it's a great cast, and the production values are superb. And I've never read the Foundation trilogy. I just haven't been able to get into it. Just like Monsters Are Due story, just wait for the humans to destroy themselves. Well, I mean, I hope humanity won't. But it's one of the interesting questions about sentient technological species. They say, well, why aren't we encountering all these other technological species out in space? Well, the one thing we don't know is how long technological species last. I mean, we're only about 100 years in terms of a technology that can reach out to our neighbors in space. And so they might not last very long in the scheme of things. We'll find out. Uh, let's see. If I have 7,500, I would in a heartbeat. Well, you can always reach out to friends and form a consortium, and that's one way to do it. So, but thanks for the thought. And but again, we want the Kickstarter campaign to succeed. So don't let it slide back below 60 grand, please, guys. And if you want to buy shares in Space Command Man, it's uh, it's a great time had by all. In fact, one of our investors, he asked me to create a lieutenant who dies in Space Command, so I'm doing that, named after him. So that's going to be very, very fun. Uh, let's see. The real message in the movie Wall-E is that we polluted our planet to the point we couldn't stay here. It's sad. Yeah, it is. And I don't think we necessarily are going to have a second Earth, frankly. I mean, I think we can go to Mars, but boy, that's going to be a hard environment. I think we got to clean up the mess we made here. And, I think we're going to do it too little, too late, frankly, because we're already in the middle of it. And those ice sheets are going to slide into the ocean. They absolutely are. But, you know, I mean, greed, bribery, all that stuff is such a short-sighted way to run a world. And, so do your part, you know, uh, do whatever you can. It's if you can't change the world, change your neighborhood, change your environment, change your community, change how you interact with your family. It doesn't have to be a political fight. You can put politics aside and you can agree that you want to have your kids have a future worth living in. That's not a political stripe. Conservatives can believe on that, and liberals can. And it doesn't have to be ideological, by the way. You can just say, you can keep it to, do you want your kids to be safe? Do you want them to be healthy? Do you want them to be happy? You know, whatever happiness is, you know, as long as you're not hurting other people, there's a lot of room for a lot of different kinds of people. So let's see. The real message. Oh yeah, Jonathan says war is what we are fighting. Most people cannot perceive the statement. Well, I mean, you could elaborate on that, but you don't have to. I mean, look, I think anytime you go into anywhere and kill a whole bunch of people, the survivors, if you kill someone's father or their mother or their child or their brother or sister, they're going to hold a grudge. I'm amazed the Vietnamese haven't, like, struck back, because we did a lot of shit there. And yet, you know, you can, even after a terrible war, you can find peace. You can find other ways of being, other ways of doing. And it's important. It's really important. We're all human beings and we don't have to kill each other. We really, really, really don't. So, but anytime there is a great injustice, uh, that's where that stuff breeds. So look to injustice. Look to do whatever you can to stop injustice wherever you find it. And it's not easy. It's not easy answers, but that's the cycle of vengeance and war and violence. it's like, it's like a cage with no way out, and we've got to find the way out. It's super important. Um, I guess just keep trying to get the message out. Thanks. Germany in particular, because of education, they're so careful about education. But U.S. doesn't have any education, doesn't have education on the destruction of the Native Americans. Britain doesn't have education on empire crimes. True, but I grew up in the '60s and early '70s, and that was the counterculture time, and we actually did have classes where we learned about the war crimes and atrocities of America. So I actually grew up like my high school history teacher was in the internment camps. He was Japanese American, so he taught history a very different way. I learned about the genocide against the Indians. My mom was married to a Hopi Indian at one point. I went to the All Tribe Conference and all that stuff, so I was steeped in that. And my mom was also married to a guy whose uncle was a Nazi general in World War II. So quite a wide range. And both my parents were Jewish. I was their first child from their first marriage, and each was married 4 times. So there you go. There's a reason I'm a writer. Let's see. Don't forget to pledge the campaign. Don't forget to buy Space Command shares. I guess just trying to get the message out. Blah 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 blah. The loss, but I agree. Education is vital, and we have to fight with all of our strength against censorship. Rewriting history so slavery wasn't bad, so Indians are just fine now. They got casinos, and so forget about the past. I mean, no, 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 no. Someone was talking about the Israelis on TV recently, and they said, and he was an Israeli, and he said, you can be both a victim and an oppressor at the same time. You can be a victim and a bad guy at the same time. And that's absolutely true. And so you can't undo the past. But I think it is incumbent to learn about the past, learn about the real past. And sometimes you can find the real truth, and sometimes you can't because everyone's dead, and it's very hard to find. But where you can find it, do so. People's history of the United States is great, great information. And I read history all the time, and I know a lot of stuff about a lot of stuff. And but also remember the other thing: you are not to blame for the evils that your ancestors committed. You so if you want to help fund a college tuition for a Native American or whatever, great, that's fine. But you don't have to, when they talk about, oh, white kids will feel guilty because of slavery and blah, blah, blah. No, no, because you teach them, you didn't do this. This isn't on your watch. You didn't run over a grandmother in your car. It's not your fault. What our parents did, what our grandparents did, whatever fucked up things they were responsible for, it's good to know it, but you don't have to wear it in your heart. You just have to live a good life and help other people when you can, as you can, and treat everyone alike. Treat everyone with equal respect. Okay, so that's my little 2 cents. I think morally we should clean up our mess before we go ruin another planet. I think we can do both. I mean, it's I very much want manned presence on Mars. I very much want manned exploration to continue. I think it's super important. And yeah, will they make a mess of it? Probably. But I think it's important. I think we need to find life on other planets. I'm certain life is ubiquitous, but we won't know until we find it. So okay. Uh, only hope someone listens. Yes, I agree. Fun to die. Fermi's paradox solved. War is the evil, fighting it is the goal. Yeah. Mazo says that's fair, but they haven't. They don't have those classes anymore. I think they stopped in the '80s with the right turns in government. Yes, and you mean the turns to the right. Um, Look, all we can do is our best. Most people get their history from movies and TV shows. So, for instance, I didn't know about the Tulsa Massacre until Damon dramatized it on the Watchmen TV series. And the Watchmen TV series, I thought was a very mixed bag. I love Watchmen, the original one, but the fact that the Tulsa Massacre, I watched that and I thought, is that real? Did that actually happen? And then I found out it did. That the Black Wall Street, this successful black town, was basically bombed out of existence, and everyone driven out of it. Terrible. And this happened around the same time in Oklahoma as the killings of the Osage, who for their money. So I mean, it's really important to know those things, but also to have the balance, because I mean, we wouldn't have America if not for the colonization of America. We might have a very different world. Who knows what that world would have been? I mean, the Aztecs cut hearts out of people, or whatever. It's like, no, there's you're gonna always have humanity doing weird shit, but do your best. Let's see. Completely agree about the censorship. Good. Space Command Blu-ray region free. Yes. Are you very active on Mr. Politics? Not that active because I don't have that many subscribers. But if you go to Mr. Politics, Mark Zicree, Mr. Politics on YouTube, you can hear me talk about what's wrong with what corruption is in government and all sorts of things. I only do it when I get particularly. I usually do it when I see a solution that no one else is articulating, and you know, I mean, for instance, it's you can really see how things have gone awry with corruption. The moment you let, infinite money come into political campaigns, I was watching a thing today about congressmen, people in Congress being able to invest in stocks of companies they oversee. It's like, no, 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 no. That's just wrong. You know. So, are you very active? And you just subscribed. Thank you, thank you, thank you. That's good. Not just traits. Solutions are good. Yes, because it's Elaine and I agreed about something recently, which is if you're complaining about something, do something. So don't just complain. Complaining doesn't change anything, doesn't fix the world. It just fills the world with more toxicity. So if you don't like Trump, do something about it. Send some money to, whatever campaign. It's like, or if you love Trump, then maybe you should read about the Nazis a little bit and how fascism takes over and what fascism is, because I don't like Trump. But it isn't I find him really obnoxious, but he's a clown. But I mean, we've had bad presidents before. I mean, Nixon and so forth. But there's levels. But when Trump talks about um, throwing his political opponents into jail, even if they're not guilty of anything, when he talks about rigging the courts, when he talks about all of these terrible things he's talking about, violence, inflicting violence on your enemies, I think this is extremely dangerous, and there are Republicans that I may not agree with, but there are many of I mean Mitt Romney. That's a man of conscience. I don't agree with a lot of stuff that he stands for or votes for, but I can look at him and say, okay, this is a guy who's got a soul, you know. But man, some of these other guys are so corrupt. It's just horrible. I think but here's one thing I will say, and don't mean to veer into politics, but if you take an oath to the Constitution and then knowingly try to overthrow the government, you should not be allowed to serve as a politician. You shouldn't be allowed to be a congressman, a senator, a cop, I mean, like the president, or you shouldn't. Vows are. I mean, this is bedrock. The reason they make their oath to the Constitution is because the Constitution is what guarantees our freedoms. And the moment the Constitution is just a piece of paper that you tear up and throw away, we're all in trouble. And so, it's really important to I I told I have politicians that are some of my favorites. I don't tend to talk about them, but it's I mean, just look at who's making the world better and who's not. Look at if they're there to help people live better, get educations, get health care, all of those things. That's meaningful to me. Anyway, let's see. Is anyone else having loading problems? I don't know. Not me. Should be in Leavenworth. I hope you mean Trump and not me. But agreed. But and again, there is a pendulum. I mean, for me, Biden won, so great. It's like, okay. And the good thing about Biden, I will say this, and people tend not to mention it. He's old, he's 80, yes, but he still got his marbles. But the really great thing about Biden is he's not so young where he needs to prove anything. He doesn't have he is in service to the country. That's why he's doing this. He is not in service to himself, honest to God. Whatever crazy Hunter Biden things you think, this is a guy who's doing this. He's 80 in his 80s. and he's doing this to keep the wheels on the wagon. He's doing this so that we're safe and protected, and he's doing it for the right reasons. So just my 2 cents. And if you disagree, fine, disagree. Biden has a stutter, and for some reason, people seem to think that makes him stupid. Yeah, but at the end of the day, the funny thing is, Trump is in his late 70s, Biden's in his 80s. 10 years from now, those guys are probably going to be gone. And, and so this is just, that's why Twilight Zone is so great. And because, again, they could comment on the issues of the moment without it being the personalities of the moment. So racism is still with us. So Rod's thing, mob hysteria is still with us. So Monsters are due on Maple Street still is valid. And that's why science fiction is so great, because you can write about all of these issues, and it doesn't polarize the same way that arguments of the moment do. So there you go. Didn't the human race originate in Africa? Therefore, I guess I'm African Australian. Um, Yes, as far as they know right now, humanity originated in Africa. There's other schools of thought, but nobody knows for sure. The fascinating thing is the first humans to colonize Europe were the Neanderthals. They were around for 200,000 years, and we only showed up, something like what, a little while ago in Europe. And so what was it, 80,000 years ago, 60,000 years ago, something like that. And so we came up from Africa, interacted with the Neanderthals. We're 2 to 3% Neanderthal if we're from Europe or Asia. Africans, interestingly, aren't. They don't have Neanderthal DNA if they're from Africa, because they didn't interbreed with the Neanderthals in Europe. So fascinating stuff. Anyway, we've gotten to 7 o'clock. I've been talking for 2 hours, so I'm gonna go and love Elaine and be happy and have my life. Please make sure that our Kickstarter campaign succeeds. If you want to buy Space Command shares, email me at marksecret@gmail.com. I want to thank you all for being so wonderful and being such good friends and supporters. And oh, Mazzo, yeah, I was going to email you. I will do that. I'm sorry. It's just been crazy busy, and I'm getting over the flu. And this is my Wrath of Khan necklace, by the way. So I'm very proud of that. Just got that recently. I wonder if Trump believes half the things he says. No, he doesn't. You can't play the system once you become the system. Yeah, true. Joker buy-in. Yeah. Thanks everyone for the chats. Live long and party on. Lions lived in Europe in the Ice Age. I know, and here too. So we had lions that are twice the size of modern ones. Anyway, thanks all. We will talk again really soon. And thanks for making these dreams come true. I really appreciate it. Bye. Okay.